Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of The Snake Pit. I'm your host, Son of Bat, and today I'm joined with Son of Phantom, and we're going to be talking about a really, really messed up crime thriller movie from the early 90s. Directed by Abel Ferrara and starring Harvey Keitel, it is the one and only Bad Lieutenant. Written by Zoe Lund and partially written by director Abel Ferrara. Produced by Edward R. Pressman. Cinematography by Ken Kelsch. Sorry if I'm butchering that. Music by Joe Delia. Distributed by Aries Films and Live Entertainment. And in this case on the DVD, Artisan Entertainment. Rated NC-17, which you all know would either be X if it was in the 80s or an unreleasable today. Made for $1 million and it only made $2 million in the box office, but don't let that undersell it. This movie is a wild ride and a welcome fit to this channel. It is so fucked up in so many ways, and I'm just rambling on. Phantom, what did you think of this movie?
This is another dirty, grindy, horrible movie for the channel. It seems like we're on a streak here. We're giving you the really bad stuff first, guys, because yeah. Bad Lieutenant, it's not like the newer version of this that we're going to review in the next episode. But man, this one is messed up, okay? It starts off and the main character drops off his kids at school. You're like, okay, that's all right. He looks stressed out. The reason he's stressed out is because he hasn't done crack enough. So he lights up crack in the middle of the parking lot and drives off, and then you get to see this guy's normal day of cheating on his wife with like a bunch of girls and then going to his mistress's house to smoke heroin and then fucking and while this is happening you see like a church and a nun and her day, and then at the end of the nun's day she gets fucking raped, and it's just like it's the wildest intro to a movie. Like, you don't know what's gonna happen, and it only gets way worse from there.
Yeah, so Phantom said it perfectly. It's insane, and we're kind of faded right now, and we're pulling back from memory. But even though we've seen it a couple weeks ago, it's still very vivid, very shocking. Like he said, it's not going to be like the one we're reviewing later. That would be Bad Lieutenant Protocol with Nicolas Cage. That movie is pretty fucking funny to some degree. Like, it's horrific, but it's hilarious. This movie is just dark, man. Like, this has been considered Harvey Keitel's like magnum opus performance, and I have to agree. I mean, I loved him in Reservoir Dogs, and I'm pretty sure he was in Mean Streets by Scorsese, which I'll get on that later. This does feel like a Scorsese movie at times, but in terms of Harvey Keitel, like he just went full on crazy into this role, and he did it so well. I don't see anyone else doing it other than Nick Cage, but even when Nick Cage did it, it was completely different. It was like, yeah, he was a cop that's doing drugs, but it was Nick Cage as a cop doing drugs. Like, you got to see it to believe it, but Harvey Keitel was just a grim character. This movie is pretty much a day in the life of this psycho. We don't really get to see an arc as to why he's the way he is. Like Phantom said, it pretty much starts with him abusing crack and cocaine like right after he drops his kids off at school. He steals drugs from the evidence locker, from crime scenes. He sells them back to drug dealers in the ghetto neighborhoods and stuff. And he even takes the drugs instead of the money, and he'll just put a whole fistful of cocaine in a sesh pipe and walk away, packs a whole vial of crack into a pipe and smokes it. Even the drug dealers are like, dude, you gotta quit. That shit's gonna kill you. And he's like, what are you, a fucking drug counselor? No, you're a drug dealer. And like, the guy is just insane. He's making these. And the other thing that comes up isn't even just the drug addiction, like the abuse of power. Like he makes two underage girls simulate fellatio while the other shows her ass while he's jerking off outside the window in a really, really long and uncomfortable scene. He keeps betting these sport bets, which are almost like self-sabotage in a way where it's like, you're never going to pay this back. Why do you keep gambling it? That could play into a theory on Catholic guilt. And this all pretty much like peaks when, like Phantom said, this nun gets raped in a church, and he has this almost what you think is going to be a redemption arc where he's going to fix the situation, but no, he just spirals even further into the gambling. He finds the two rapists, but instead of arresting them, he smokes crack and watches the World Series with them, and it is just a very bizarre fucking movie. Like, that's a basic rundown of the plot. We don't want to spoil too much. I recommend you check this movie out. It is a fucking weird one, but what were some of your like instant feelings like watching this movie? Like you said, you thought it was going to be normal, and it just kept getting worse. But how bad are we talking by the time we got to the end? Like,
like he just turned into a total degenerate. It seemed like he like might have been someone years ago, but like the last few years of this guy's life must have just been horrible. Like he's just like the abuse on his body and his like just wow. His mental state, like he's killing people all the time, like just doing horrible things to get by, and like getting all this money from drug dealers and shit that he's supposed to be policing, and then making bets with loan sharks or against his house with that money. Like what are you doing? It makes no sense. Like you have like it's a pure tale of self-destruction, because he totally could have gotten out of this in a bunch of like so many ways.
Yeah, I know. The other crazy thing too is he there's like a $50,000 reward if he catches the guys who raped the nun, and he needs about, I think, like 80 to 150,000 to pay off the loan shark debt. So he can get the 50 for catching these two guys. He has $30,000 from selling like heroin, crack, and coke all around NYC.
And instead of getting the other 70 or 80 he had to pay back the loan shark, he just decides to die.
He gives it to the rapist too.
Yeah, he gives all the money to the fucking rapist, the 30 grand in the chest. Yeah, to the rapist, and sends them on a bus. Says get out of town. It's like
it totally
and then dies in the next scene.
And it totally eliminates the redemption arc, which I mean I thought it was pretty cool, because I wasn't expecting this to be a story of redemption at all, but like, you know, from the moment onward, you think, okay, he's going to do the right thing. He's going to do the right thing. And then he just pulls the rug out from under you. Like, oh, no, he's not arresting them. He's doing drugs with them. Oh, he's not going to kill them or bring them in. He's going to put them on a bus and give them the money and just tell them never to come back. Like, it's insane. And then instead of like, and then almost as soon as that happens, he gets in his car and gets plugged by an unseen mafia guy for not paying the debt. It is fucking wild. You know, there's a lot of crazy characters in this movie too, like Zoe Lund, one of the co-writers. She's actually played Miss 45 in another Abel Ferrara movie. Real life drug addict. You know, maybe part of the reason why this movie got the NC-17 rating is the scene where she's smoking and shooting heroin. Those were real. I don't believe Harvey Keitel was actually doing, because I don't believe was doing drugs like that. Coke maybe, who knows, but the heroin shit was all her. She actually died a few years later, which is pretty messed up. And there's actually a huge dispute whether or not about how much of the movie she actually wrote versus how much Abel Ferrara wrote. A lot of what I've been reading is that this movie was kind of, you know, it was written, but as they were making it, a lot of it was done on the fly, which kind of adds to like the chaotic nature of it. And, you know, they had no permits for a lot of the scenes. So it's like, it's really funny when you see some of the background people who are definitely not actors reacting to scenes like Harvey Keitel losing his shit about, you know, like losing his bet, and he shoots the fucking car in the middle of the street. There's a guy just watching. So, you know, it adds to the guerrilla style filmmaking, but there's like no real known fact about how much was written by Zoe and how much was written by Abel. So you kind of go off like, you know, notes, but it's still very interesting that something so quick and on the spot became a very competent and fucking crazy movie. Like, you don't see that a lot. Like, when people just kind of jump in and don't really try, it just turns out into a shit show. But this movie feels like, you know, really well made. It feels, like I said earlier, like a Scorsese movie at times. It's got, you know, lighting that really reminds you of like Goodfellas, Mean Streets. Like, it's got themes that are like Taxi Driver. It's just a wild movie. And, you know, Abel Ferrara, he also did King of New York, which, interesting enough, Christopher Walken was supposed to play the lieutenant, which I think would have been hilarious, and it would have made the movie more of a comedy. But I think it's really good that Keitel took the lead, because I don't really know how this would have worked as a comedy. Like, you know, like...
Yeah. I can't find his name, but... It's a really interesting fact about this film is that the guy who actually caught
a real rapist,
who actually caught the real rapist that this story is based off of was actually in the film as one of the other detectives. In
fucking wild.
Yeah, it's a really cool fact, and it really adds to it. I feel like, you know, having it set, you know, close to the time it actually happened and in the same spaces as it actually happened in New York was a very interesting and very grimy way to like portray this movie. It was very well done.
Yeah, no, and like that's a thing about Abel Ferrara. Like he just brings the grime out in a lot of his earlier movies. After this, he would go on to do stuff like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, like the third remake. But his stuff from Bad Lieutenant backwards, like it's all super dark, super like realistic. There's an interesting thing though. There's the whole speech that Zoe Lund gives to Harvey Keitel when she's giving him drugs. Like it's called the vampire speech. That again was written on the spot when the movie was being made. And it's interesting that there's this whole segment about vampirism representing the lieutenant's behavior, because Abel Ferrara also later did a vampire/drug movie in '95 called The Addiction. So it's almost like there was a movie brought out of, like, an idea was there in the middle of making this movie on this. But like, it's just crazy how this guy's mind was working to make all these wild, fucked up, bizarre movies. And even Scorsese recognized this as one of the 5 best films of the 90s. So it's got a lot going for it. It's also, though, a very difficult watch. It's not something you can kind of just throw on and like have a good time. You are going to feel like a bag of shit after you watch it. Like, Harvey Keitel's performance was great, but like he was a horrible fucking person in this movie. Like, you kind of feel dirty at the end of it, would be the best way to describe it. Like, it's just insane. Again, it definitely earned the NC-17 rating, which, like I said earlier, would be akin to getting an X rating. It actually had to get cut down for a Blockbuster and Hollywood Video release, because at the time, and I think for the whole time period of their existence, they wouldn't carry NC-17 or X-rated movies. So the movie got trimmed down to an R. I have never seen that version, but I could imagine it would just cut down the drug abuse and maybe some of the sex scenes and shit. There was also some music change-ups that happened that I'm reading about. Apparently the movie was banned in Ireland, which is wild. But for its demeaning treatment of women, of all things, no disrespect to the Irish, but I thought it would have been like the drugs and the fucking like straight up anarchistic behavior and, misanthropic behavior that would have gotten it banned, not just the fake blowjob scene, you know what I mean? But hey, every country's got their own quirks when it comes to banning shit, I guess. What would you rate this movie on a scale from 1 to 10, and would you recommend this to people?
No, I would definitely recommend this to our viewers. If you haven't seen it, this is a great one. If Martin Scorsese says it's on his top 5 from the 90s, you got to check it out, right? Like, it's just it's a good, well-made movie, but it's like fucking Bat said, man, it's hard to watch. It's dark. You gotta be in the mood to watch it, and just realize that you're gonna be sad. You're gonna be a sad person after you watch it. It's you always, there's this hope, this like they're playing on the Catholic guilt throughout the whole thing, so you think maybe it might be a redemption movie, and it's just, it never is. And it's really like, the ending just fucks it. It's so sad. But the rating, I'd easily give it a 9 to a 9.5. It's a very good movie, very, very well made.
Yeah, like tacking on to what Phantom said, like, it is a very dark, maddening descent into chaos. And honestly, the best way to describe it is it's like a ride straight into hell, and the lieutenant is the devil pulling you in. Like, it's his ride down into hell, and you're in the backseat watching it all go down. It is fucking insane. Highly recommend it. I remember the first time I saw this movie, I was like fucking nailed to the wall. I hadn't seen any crime movie that fucking grimy. I mean, there was obviously a couple here and there, but like nothing so like nihilistic and just disturbing. Like, this movie, like, it's a crime movie and I guess to some degree a thriller movie, but it has elements that are like, I wouldn't want to say a horror movie, but it's definitely a very horrific movie, especially like the rape scene. Like, that feels like something that could have been in a horror exploitation movie. And I mean, Abel Ferrara did Driller Killer, one of the Video Nasty movies. Fucking, the guy knows horror, so it makes sense that certain elements from like his previous work would show up in this. And it's always been a favorite of mine. I'd have to rate it like fucking like Phantom said, either a 9, 9.5. On a good day, I'd probably give it a 10. Definitely a fucking underrated movie. If any of you guys out there can find a copy, if you can find that double feature that comes with this and Reservoir Dogs, that is a solid DVD. If you can find this version that we're reviewing, the original Artisan NC-17 cut, I highly recommend that too. Don't know how difficult that is to find, but you know, you guys are pretty resourceful. I'm sure you'll come up with something. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. If there's another crime movie you'd like us to check out, or another really disturbing movie that isn't necessarily horror, don't forget to comment. We'd like to thank everyone who is a new subscriber. Every new one of you guys just keeps putting us up in the algorithm with all the other channels, and we appreciate you for that. So have a good one. We're going to go hit the shatter, boys. Peace.
Peace.